Hey guys and girls, welcome to another edition of Bolts Breakdown. Brian Burns, beat writer for TampaBayLightning.com. Recher 95.3 WDAE. We are here live from the Brandon Ice Sports Forum in beautiful Brandon, Florida. I have not been here in quite a while, Burnsy, and I love the some of the adjustments and the new locker rooms. They're pretty nice for the Bolts. So if you got some of the videos that I put up on Twitter, at JRecher, at BBurnsNHL, we got some good stuff on there. You'll be seeing some of the new and improved locker rooms for the Bolts. So we'll get into tonight's game against the rival in the Atlantic Division, the Boston Bruins. But let's look back to what happened in the previous game for the Lightning, a loss to the Blues. And I tell you what, Burnsy, is kind of a tough luck loss. They go down 3-0. They battle all the way back. It looked like they had the game-tying goal. The replay worked against them, and it was determined that they were offsides. But a lot of really good heart shown from the Bolts in that game in St. Louis.
Yeah, you look at that first period, and 3 goals against in a minute and 15 seconds, and coming at the end of a long road trip. It could have been a game that got away from the Bolts, quite frankly. And I know we were talking about it. I was thinking about that Arizona game that came again at the end of a really long road trip where they lost 7-1, and you have those thoughts in your head. Maybe this one could go in that direction for the Lightning, but thought they showed a lot of resolve and fighting back in that game. The goal from Alex Killorn at the beginning of the second period was huge. Getting one back on they're on the penalty kill at that point. I think that kind of sent a message like, hey, we can still win this game. If we get our game back where we usually have it, we can get right back in this one. And then Pointer scored a little bit after that. Just some, tough luck. Like you said, the offside, it was offside. It was a good call, but it was just barely offside. A couple posts, Kucherov especially hit 2 or 3 posts, had a really good chance towards the end of the game to score one and sailed one over the net on one that he probably scores 8 out of 10 times on. So, they had their opportunities to come out of there with at least a point. Unfortunate that they weren't able to, but I think they learned a little bit about themselves in that loss. I think they liked the way that they were able to come back in that game, the resolve that they showed, which they've shown pretty much all season this year. And so not all negative from that 4-3 loss in St. Louis.
Shout out to John, always watching from Olean, Paul in Jacksonville, and Ernest brings up a good point here. I thought that was one of the best games for Killorn. He actually had probably one of his worst games just a couple of games ago, and he had a couple of turnovers lead to some goals. But it's always good, and you talk about this team being so resilient. It's the whole team, but certain players too. And you see a guy either have a bad game, he comes back and has a good game, or a guy sits out for a little while, he comes back and he has a real effective game. This team is just filled with resilient players.
Yeah, and a lot of those, it's from the third and fourth line guys, and you look, a lot of these guys are starting to heat up now. Killorn, he's been heating up a little bit here of late. Anthony Cirelli, he's been on an incredible run here the last month or so, and that third line is going to be key for this team going into the playoffs. I think, a lot of times when you get into these postseason matchups, the top 2 lines for each team kind of cancel each other out. You're talking about a lot of superstars, a lot of really high-powered players. But it's when you get into the third and fourth lines and the depth of each team that's, could carry, one opponent over another. And I think what the Lightning have with their third line, especially with Anthony Cirelli kind of coming into his own right now, the way Alex Killorn's playing. Yanni Gourde's been playing really well too. He'll have to sit out tonight's game from the Carolina hit against Jordan Staal, but this will be his last game of his suspension that he has to serve. But prior to that, he had been starting to put up points with a little bit more regularity. So that third line for the Lightning is really starting to get going here. The fourth line has been going for quite a while now, and then they add Ryan Callahan with Yanni Gourde out, and he just comes in, doesn't really miss a beat, and they're able to keep that thing going too. So it's good to see these bottom 2 lines for the Lightning really starting to produce and really starting to crank up their production as the playoffs are about to get set.
Ernest says as well, I'm still concerned about Girardi and Strawman being out. Good news and bad news. It was good to see Strawman out there today skating with the team for morning skate. Do you think he'll be back in the lineup tonight?
I don't think tonight.
No?
If you looked at the
there we go.
With Strawman, he was paired up with Cameron Gauntz as kind of like the fourth pairing. So there were a couple drills that they did where Strawman didn't take part in. So I don't expect we'll see him tonight. But the Lightning have 4 days off after this before they have to play their next game Saturday. against Washington to close out the home portion of the regular season schedule. I could see him potentially getting back, and I think that makes sense. There's no reason to rush him in for tonight's game. Give him another 4 days off where he can get back and feeling good about himself and how he is physically. And then maybe get them back in there for that Washington game, or at least when they have that 4-game road trip to close out, I think we'll see him again.
And Girardi, I mean, we just talked about this with John Cooper. Joe Smith from The Athletic asked about Girardi if he was going to be ready for the playoffs. I actually just put up the video up on my Twitter at Recher, and what Cooper said was that he doesn't think he will be back for the regular season, and that they hope he'll be back for the playoffs. So it doesn't sound too good about Dan Girardi.
Yeah, doubtful for the rest of the regular season, hopeful for the playoffs. And that's a blow, for the Lightning. I think they were counting on him to be one of their top 6.
Yeah.
So means we probably might see Jan Ruda a little bit longer, and I don't know if the Lightning will go into the playoffs with him if Girardi's not able to go. The good thing is, if the Lightning, and we all think that this team's going to go on a lengthy playoff run, the good thing is, if Girardi's not available to get back for that first round series, then hopefully there's a second and a third round and potentially a Stanley Cup final that he will be able to get back into. So, the fact that he's not in the regular season, while you'd like to see him in there so everybody can get the cohesion and the chemistry, and you have your defensive pairings how you want them going into the playoffs, that's a little bit of a blow, but it really doesn't matter here in these last few games of the regular season. Give everybody else a chance to get in, but you hope that maybe he can get back in for that first round playoff series, whoever that might be against.
Yeah, and luckily enough, a guy like Dan Girardi, if he does end up coming back into the lineup, it's not really going to take long, I don't think, for him to get used to it. It's not one of those things where he has to kind of get used to the structure, get used to playing guys. More than anything, it's just getting his legs back.
Yeah,
I mean,
I think a physical aspect, skating a lot, getting the energy up, and being able to get the legs ready to play 20 minutes a game again. When you sit out for a month or so, or however long he's been, I think it's 8 games now. When you sit out for that length of time, the physical component, the conditioning, you're not able to replicate that with the work that you do off the ice. So I think more than anything, getting those legs back and the conditioning back is going to be his biggest concern.
How do you think Jan Ruda's looked in his time? I mean, he had one tough play, I believe it was against the Capitals, but other than that, man, I think he's pretty assimilated himself pretty well to this lineup.
Yeah, we talked to John Cooper about it after his first game, how he thought that Ruda did in that first game, and I think kind of Coop's answer to that question echoes what everybody else is seeing. Like, you haven't really noticed him out there. So when you're talking about a defenseman, that's can be a good thing, especially a young guy like that. You don't want to see any glaring mistakes or any errors or turnovers. And like you said, he had that one, I think it was against Washington, where he kind of turned it over in front of the net. It led directly to a goal. But other than that, I can't really think of any other plays where he's given up a puck in his own end and it's led to a dangerous scoring chance against. I think he's been solid defensively. I think he's moved the puck well. His first pass has been really good, and he's playing with that speed that the Lightning like to play with. He might not skate with that same type of speed, but he's moving the puck along with that speed that the Lightning like to utilize, and I think he's been pretty solid back there.
Yeah, we've seen some of the drills that they were doing today. Very interesting at morning skate today how quickly the guys are moving the puck, and they did a drill where the 4 coaches were in the neutral zone, and the players had to move the puck quickly, whether it was along the sideboards or just one quick pass through the middle. And if you've seen the Lightning play this year and the teams that they've had struggles with, it was when those teams clogged up the neutral zone. So very smart by John Cooper and the coaching staff to kind of, hey, let's practice that. Let's practice beating that. That's what good teams do. And I thought that they really made some strides today in improving on that. And if Boston tries to clog up the neutral zone tonight, we'll see if that practice today paid off.
Yeah, and you're going to see a lot of that in the playoffs. I remember Detroit years ago was really good at that, and Lightning had such a high-flying offense, and then you played Detroit in the first round, and they just clogged up that neutral zone so much, and it really took the Lightning 5 games, I think, in that series before they really figured out a way to get around that. So good to see them working on that, because that's something they're going to have to deal with throughout the playoffs. Yeah,
without a doubt. And, Cameron Gaunce was out there today with Strawman, and we saw the last 3 guys on the ice today was Cameron Gaunce, Danik Martel, and Yanni Gourde. So, obviously, we know Gourde is going to be out for tonight because of that second game of the suspension. Danik Martel scratched. He's been scratched for the majority of the season.
Last 15 games,
And then Cameron Gaunce. So, those 3 guys, I think if we can still hear, I think they're still on the other rink right now. They were. We talked to John Cooper. We actually waited 5 minutes, talked to John Cooper for a while today. Another 5 minutes, came back. They were still on the ice. So if my ears are not deceiving me, I think they're still on the ice getting some work, which is good. I mean, this is a great practice facility out here in Brandon. So if the guys aren't going to be able to skate tonight, it's good for them to get some work in with Coach Jeff Halpern on the other rink. Corey Brown says Anton Strawman come back before the playoffs. I think he will come back before the playoffs.
Absolutely. I don't think there's any concern there.
So maybe Saturday because, it makes sense. I mean, you have all these days off.
Yeah, you don't necessarily want to rush him back tonight. Although if you do get him back tonight and he does play, I don't think that's going to happen. But if you play him tonight, then you do have 4 days where he can recover from that, and you can kind of evaluate, how you felt during the game, if there was anything that was still lingering.
But you would think, you brought it up that if he was going to start tonight, that he would be not. You would have seen him in those
defensive pairings. Yeah. You would have seen him, probably in that third pair with probably with Coburn.
Yeah, and you probably would have seen Ruda with Gauntz rather than Strawman with Gauntz. So Bryan Burns, beat writer for TampaBayLightning.com, Jay Recher 95.3 WDAE. Make sure you share Bolts Breakdown on your Facebook. Put shared there. Let us know where you're watching from, and let us know if you have any questions about the Bolts. Oh, lights setting the mood around here. Before we get into tonight's game, I thought Paul Kennedy brought up a great point after morning skate today when we were talking to John Cooper. Today's the 6-year anniversary for when John Cooper got hired as the head coach of the Tampa Bay Lightning. And I thought it was really cool to talk to him and for him to say, one of the things he was most proud of was just the Bolts, man. It was just everybody in Tampa Bay now is a Bolts fan. You see so many Bolts jerseys. And then also on the road, seeing how many Bolts fans, those traveling fans, the Distant Thunder. I mean, it's huge, and it's just so crazy. It seems just like that, man. 6 years have gone by as John Cooper as the head coach. It's pretty astounding.
Yeah, as someone that goes on the road with the team a little bit, and especially during the playoffs, you see it, from our perspective too. You see more Lightning jerseys in opposing arenas than you used to. You see a lot of fans just hanging out outside the hotel. I know there was after the game in Carolina, there was a huge contingent of Lightning fans that were outside the kind of the bus player compound where the bus for the Lightning was set up, and the players and coaches were walking on to go to the airport. And there was probably 100, maybe 150 Lightning fans there just cheering and chanting and yelling for Coop when he comes out, yelling for Kucherov. So it's good to see that fan support has grown so much from this team. From the time when John Cooper came in and the organization was, Yzerman was here as the GM. Jeff Finnick had taken over as the owner a couple years prior to that. But, before then, it was, some dark days for the Lightning franchise, before Jeff Finnick came over. And I think it really started with Jeff Finnick and what he's done here with the franchise and then with the surrounding area in Tampa, and then bringing Steve Yzerman in and what he was able to build on the hockey side. And then you bring in a John Cooper, and he's able to get things where you want it to go. And we're really reaping the benefits of all that foresight right now.
Without a doubt. And a shout-out to Jesper Hermansen, Distant Thunder from Denmark. Hope to get tickets to the Global Series in Stockholm.
I think it's going to be a hot ticket.
Yeah, for real. We're trying to go, too, so that would be pretty awesome. You're going, right? You got to go.
I mean, I hope I'm on the charter. We'll see.
You got to get Burnsy on the charter, right? I mean, come on, Lightning. You got to hook this guy up for sure. We're trying to go as a station and do a broadcast from over there.
Yeah.
How crazy would that be? That would be awesome to go to Sweden. But like we learned the other day, we'll stay with the Hedmans. 6 hours from Stockholm is, how do you pronounce it?
Örnsköldsvik.
Örnsköldsvik.
Yeah.
Look at this guy, man. Paul Hilbrand, always look forward to your show on game days. We appreciate you, Paul. Well, it is a game day, like Paul says. Bryan and Jay here with you on Bolts Breakdown. Let's look forward to tonight's game. Burnsy, not an easy matchup against the Atlantic Division Boston Bruins, even though the Lightning have the division, the conference, and the President's Trophy locked up. But I tell you what, man, it is always a battle against these Bruins, whether it's home or away. It doesn't matter. We know it's going to be a hotly contested battle tonight, especially with that top line of Bergeron, Pasternak, and Marchand. What's your 3 keys to victory for the Bolts tonight?
Yeah, a big one for me is that first shift after a goal, whether it's a goal for or a goal against for the Lightning. I think that's a big shift, and we saw that in that St. Louis game where they gave up. They played kind of poor for the first 10 minutes or so, but they hadn't been they hadn't gotten hurt yet, and then they gave up that first goal, and it just seemed like everybody was kind of hanging their heads, and no one was really working to try to get back into the game. And then the next thing you know, a minute and 15 later, you're down 3-0. And all those goals just came boom, boom, boom. And that first shift after the first goal was a poor shift for the Lightning and ended up in the back of their net. That first shift after the second goal was another poor shift ended up in the back of their net.
Yeah.
So I think that's a key. Whether you score a goal, whether you give up a goal, that next shift, you need to get right back on it. You can't really let up based on what happened previous to that. Number 2 for me, we saw it in the last time the Lightning played Boston. They really came in with intensity and a purpose and really wanted to kind of send a message, I think, to the Lightning that they were going to be a tough out, and they're a team that they're probably going to see. If you look at the way the playoffs are lining up, it's looking like the Lightning, if they get through the first round, they're probably going to have to play Boston or Toronto. I think it'll be
matchup.
Boston.
Yeah, I agree.
You're probably going to have to play Boston again in the second round, and I think the Bruins wanted to send a message that that's not going to be that's not going to be another 5-game series like it was last year. That's going to be a tough series for this team, and I just want to see the Lightning match that intensity. I want to see them now send the message to Boston like, okay, you got us up there, but we're the better team. There's a reason why we have 120 points in the NHL. There's a reason we locked up President's Trophy a long time ago. There's a reason we locked up the division a long time ago because we're the best team in the NHL. So I want to see the Lightning come out with that same kind of purpose that Boston played with the last time these two teams matched up. And then number 3 for me, if you look at the way the Lightning schedule here is lining up, they've got 6 more games in regular season. Tonight's game is the last game before they go on a 4-day break, which is so rare at this late part of the regular season. So just want to see them finish strong, and specifically with tonight, because a lot of these guys are going to go on vacation here for a couple of days. It's the last chance for them before the playoffs start for them to just kind of get away from everything, to decompress, to get their mind in the right frame of mind, then come back ready to go for those final 5 regular season games and the start of the playoffs. So you just don't want to have guys like with one foot on the airplane tonight, when I'm sure a lot of them are probably going off somewhere tomorrow morning. So just finish strong, come with that same purpose that we've seen from them in these last few games, especially that Washington game on the road. And I think everything will be good with these guys.
My one guy to watch tonight, David Pastrnak, back in the lineup after missing a bunch of time. He fell outside of like a team function. Now he's back in that line. We know how dangerous that line could be.
That's one thing Tampa doesn't have to worry about, is falling on ice
That's
outside
right.
of their
That's
arena.
right.
That's another benefit to living in Tampa and getting free agents to come here. You don't have to worry about slipping on the sidewalk unless you're on a road game.
That's true. Pastrnak, that's the guy to watch tonight, number 88. Big, fast, strong. In my mind, probably their best offensive threat. But you know what this team brings, whether it's Bergeron or Marchand. They're dealing with some injuries on the back line. We saw it today out here. Krug, Gerelzik, and Kevin Miller were out here, as well as the guy that they picked up at the deadline from the Devils, Marcus Johansson. So all of those guys will probably be out tonight, which is crazy to think 3 of their 6 guys are out. And regardless, you know what happens. Sometimes the teams play better that way because it's kind of like they use that as like a rallying cry. We've seen that sometimes with the Lightning with guys being out. So definitely not a team to take lightly. I know the Lightning won't do that. And we talked about this before, though, Burnsy. I think it's an advantage playing Boston and Washington and playing Boston again in the last game because I know some people were worried, like, how do they not rest on their laurels? How do they not get complacent? Well, it's tough to do that when you're playing against... Forget about teams that are good. These are top-notch teams. I mean, there's a lot of people out there that think
teams are probably going to see in the playoffs.
Exactly. I mean, you look at Washington, and we said it last time we were together on Bolts Breakdown. I think Washington and Tampa might be the Eastern Conference Final again. I mean, they look like the 2 most complete teams in the NHL, save for maybe some teams out in the West. But I wouldn't be surprised if those were the last 2 teams standing in the Eastern Conference. Yeah. And like you just alluded to, if the Lightning play the Bruins in the second round, so it's going to be a war of attrition for this Lightning team. It's been such a good regular season, but it's not going to be an easy path to hoist Lord Stanley's Cup. But really, I mean, they wouldn't want it any other way, and that's just the way it goes. To be the best, woo! You got to beat the best, like the great Ric Flair said.
Yeah, and it looks like Montreal is a possible first-round playoff opponent. They've got a game against them. Toronto could also, they could knock off Boston. It looks like it's going to be Boston-Toronto in that, just like last year in the first-round series. So whoever comes out of that, the Lightning still have a game against Toronto. So of these last 6 regular season games, 5 are coming against teams that they could potentially see in the playoffs. The other one's the Ottawa game, where maybe you get like a little bit of a break when playing against a team that's possibly not tanking, but they don't even have their first pick overall anymore. No. But
they're playing hard, which is they're out of it. But they've won like weird games in the last couple of weeks, where it's like there's no way they should win games. So you never know. Those are the nights you got to really. Those are kind of those sneak up games, the trap games. Yeah,
if you lose your focus for a little bit, you find yourself on the wrong end of a score line there. But yeah, this is going to be a tough challenge. These last 6 regular season games are all going to come against really good opponents. So I think that's going to help the Lightning kind of maintain their focus going going into their postseason. And I've seen this before. Like the Lightning, even when they went to the Stanley Cup final a few years ago, they didn't really finish that strong.
No.
Last year, I don't really think they finished that strong, but it didn't really seem to matter. Once the playoffs started, they were able to pick their game back up, and this team does kind of have that ability to just kind of flip a switch if they need to. Like maybe the intensity's not there in the regular season, playoffs start, flip a switch, and they're unbelievable. So I wouldn't like stress out too much. If this team like lost the last 6 regular season games, wouldn't be good, but I wouldn't stress out about it too much. I think this team's ready to go into the playoffs.
Bryan Burns, beat writer for TampaBayLightning.com. Follow him on Twitter at BBurnsNHL. You can follow the team at TB Lightning. Go to TampaBayLightning.com for the best news and notes. What's the story on today, brother?
Yep, just like we said, playing Boston, tough opponent. Want to see them kind of match that intensity that Boston showed in that 4-1 loss for the Lightning up at TD Garden. Potential second-round playoff preview, and then obviously the 4 days off after this. How are the Lightning going to respond with a break coming up? Are they going to play strong, finish out strong, or are they going to have their head somewhere else thinking about laying on the beach somewhere?
That's right. Follow me on Twitter at JRecher. You can follow the station at 95.3 WDAE. Go to 95.3WDAE.com for the best Bolts coverage. I'll be live from Amalie Arena today with the Ron and Ian show from 3 to 7, so go make sure you check us out. Burnsy and I will be on the roundtable with Greg Linnelli starting at 6 o'clock on Lightning Power Play. Go to TBL Power Play on the iHeartRadio app, and also up the dial on our sister station News Radio 970 WFLA. That's where the game will be, and also on Fox Sports Sun tonight. All right, it's our only Bolts breakdown for the week since they play on Saturday. So I guess we'll see you guys next week.
Next Monday, yeah.
Next Monday again, another Monday game. Pretty crazy.
Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday to close out the season.
That's how we do it.
Only 2 weeks left in the regular season.
Can't believe it. And then playoff hockey will be here, and then we'll have Bolts Breakdown for you. That's Brian. I'm Jay. We'll see you next time right here on Bolts Breakdown.